Welcome to Sleepy Historian, where old tales whisper by candlelight and memories gently drift into dreams. Tonight, let us journey back to a time long asleep in history.
Settle in, let your breath slow, and your thoughts drift like mist over still water. Tonight, we take a gentle journey through a city like no other, a city where buildings rise from the sea itself, where masks whisper secrets behind every corner, and where quiet power shapes centuries from behind golden walls. Venice. In the soft hush of the lagoon, history lingers. You can almost hear it in the creak of old wooden docks, in the soft slap of water against stone, in the faint, distant call of a gondolier's voice lost somewhere in the night. But behind the romance lies something grittier, stranger, quieter. Beneath the painted facades and gilded ceilings was a life of exhausting labor, of silent ambition, and of subtle games of influence played in shadows. In this 2-hour journey, we'll explore 4 layers of this floating world: the grueling life of a gondola apprentice paddling through sewage and silence, the unlikely rise of Enrico Dandolo, a blind Doge who changed the map of Europe, the mystery of Venetian Carnival masks and the secrets they were meant to hide, the whispering power inside the Doge's palace, where velvet cloaks and cold eyes shaped a republic without a king. Let the canals carry you. The pace will be slow, the water still. And the deeper we drift into the past, the quieter the world becomes. Imagine waking before the sun, your bed little more than a wooden plank beside a damp storeroom near the water's edge. Your body is sore from the day before, arms heavy, legs stiff. But there's no time to rest. The master's gondola must be cleaned before dawn. You step into your boots, still wet from yesterday's work. The air is thick smelling of fish, old salt, and something fouler. The canals don't move much in the summer. Their surface lies still, almost oily, and the scent of rotting seaweed and sewage hangs over the docks like a curtain. Your first task? Bailing water out of the hull. The gondola leaked a little, most did. You use an old wooden scoop, passing it rhythmically, back and forth, your breath visible in the morning chill. There's no rush, but there is no pause either. The work has a rhythm. Scoop, dump. Scrub, rinse, repeat. It is in these quiet, repetitive motions that much of an apprentice's life unfolds. You are not alone. Other apprentices move about silently, white shadows in the fog. The masters speak rarely, and when they do, it is in short, clipped orders. Their gondolas are their pride-sleek, black vessels that glide through the canals like whispers. To touch one with dirty hands is to invite punishment. You scrub the hull with a stiff brush, kneeling over planks slick with algae. The scent of damp wood mixes with the brine in the air. A rat scurries past bold, unbothered. They are everywhere. On the docks, beneath the bridges, even aboard the boats at times. You learn not to flinch. You learn to ignore them. The sun begins to rise. A pale light filters through the city's narrow alleyways, reflecting off stone buildings streaked with centuries of water. Still, the canals remain quiet. Only the distant sound of bells begins to stir the city from its sleep. Breakfast? Perhaps later, if your master allows. Likely just a crust of bread soaked in yesterday's fish broth, eaten by hand as you walk alongside the canal. Your uniform is simple, a linen shirt already stained with salt, patched trousers, bare hands. Gloves are for the rich. You row with your skin against wood. Later in the day, you'll be allowed to ride if your master is in a generous mood. You'll stand at the back, learning the delicate balance of oar and water, the strange twisting motion that guides a gondola forward. One wrong stroke, and the boat bumps the wall. Another mistake, and you might find yourself in the canal, a humiliation that lingers like the smell of the water itself. And oh, the water. It carries everything: waste, decay, disease. In the hotter months, the stink deepens and illness spreads like the tide. But even in winter, it holds danger. Cold seeps into your bones. Splashes turn to icy crust, and still you row, yet still you dream of your own gondola, painted black with polished trim, of wealthy passengers handing you coins without words, of gliding silently through the Grand Canal as nobles watch from the bridges above. That dream keeps you going, not the bread, not the praise, just the dream. Because here in Venice, a gondolier can rise. One day, if you endure, you may have your own boat, your own apprentice, your own name whispered across the lagoon. But for now, scoop, dump, scrub, rinse, and row. Let us now drift back further into the 12th century, where power in Venice was as fluid as the canals, and the Republic was caught between East and West, trade and conquest, gold and blood. Enrico Dandolo, a name still whispered in histories of empire, betrayal, and ambition. He was old remarkably so for his time, blind, yet somehow sharper than the rest. Dandolo was not born into legend. He came from a respected, though not dominant, Venetian family. His early life is quiet in the records, shaded like so many medieval paths. But by middle age, he had become a skilled diplomat, trusted, resourceful, relentless. He traveled to Constantinople twice, first as a diplomat, then as a Venetian envoy in a time when the Eastern Roman Empire still held its ancient glitter. It was there, so the stories go, that he lost his sight. Some say it was due to illness. Others whisper that it was an injury, a punishment perhaps, a blow to the head or an intentional act during the political intrigues of the Byzantine court. But Dandolo never explained, and so the truth remains blurred. What is certain is this: by the time he became Doge of Venice, in the year 1192, he was well into his 70s, blind and utterly focused. His rule would not be passive. Though unable to see, Dandolo perceived the movements of power with uncanny clarity. He restructured finances, tightened control of trade routes, and strengthened Venice's grip on Adriatic commerce. But it was in the year 1201 that everything changed. The Fourth Crusade, originally called to reclaim Jerusalem, it would take a strange, unintended turn, one that would reshape the Christian world and Venice's place within it. The Crusaders, mostly French nobles and knights, had no ships, no fleet. They turned to Venice. Dandolo agreed to build them a massive transport fleet, hundreds of ships, food, crews, everything. In return, the Crusaders would pay Venice a fortune. But when the ships were ready, the knights could not pay. And so Dandolo made a choice. A gentle, measured voice might say he redirected their purpose. A sharper tongue might call it extortion, manipulation. He offered them a new target, the Christian city of Zara, rival to Venice and rebellious. The Crusaders, desperate and indebted, agreed. They attacked the city, pillaged it, and then the journey grew darker still. A Byzantine prince, exiled and desperate, approached the Crusaders. His name was Alexios. He promised gold, support, troops. In return, he asked the Crusaders to help him reclaim his throne in Constantinople. Dandolo saw an opportunity that others did not. And so, in 1204, the blind Doge led an army of Western Crusaders, not to Jerusalem, but against the greatest Christian city of the East, Constantinople. The assault was brutal. The city burned, icons were shattered, relics stolen. A civilization already cracked was broken open, and Venice profited. She received treasures, trade rights, islands, and influence beyond measure. The spoils of an empire came back across the Adriatic in crates of gold, silks, and marble. Dandolo did not return. He died in Constantinople a year later, around the age of 98. He was buried in the great church of Hagia Sophia itself. No Doge had ever wielded power so audaciously, and yet, even now, his burial site is empty, lost, his bones scattered, his monument destroyed, Only his legend remains. And a lingering question: how did a blind old man steer a fleet, a crusade, and an empire into history? As we leave Dandolo's shadow behind, let us drift gently toward another form of secrecy, not written in treaties or battles, but in cloth, whispers, and disguise. Soft footsteps echo across worn stone. The flicker of torchlight dances on narrow alley walls. A gentle splash from the canal nearby, and then a figure appears, shrouded in black. Face covered by a white mask, expressionless, timeless, unknown. This was Venice, not just the Venice of boats and bells, but the Venice of masks. Tonight, let's step quietly into a world of velvet cloaks, hidden smiles, and questions that still linger. The carnival begins each year. As winter began to loosen its grip, the city transformed. For weeks, Venice was a stage. The carnival began as early as the 11th century, but reached its true splendor in the 18th. Still, even in medieval times, the tradition held weight. During Carnival, all rules seemed to bend. Music echoed from windows, wine flowed freely, the poor danced with the rich. The noble might walk beside the merchant, each hidden behind the same painted facade, but what began as celebration became something else. Masks, you see, didn't just hide identity, they erased it. Anonymity in a crowded world, Venetian life was narrow both in its streets and its social expectations. The city was dense, layered, and hierarchical. Who you were mattered. Almost no one could see your face. The bata, a stiff white mask with no mouth, worn with a black cloak and tricorn hat, was the most iconic. It allowed one to speak, to eat, to move, without ever revealing the face. It was worn by men and women alike, often by nobles. The Moretta, a small black velvet oval held in place by biting a button between the teeth, was worn only by women, silent, elegant, mysterious. And then there was the Medico della Peste, the plague doctor. A long-nosed, bird-like mask stuffed with herbs and scented cloth, believed to filter the air. It was terrifying and strangely theatrical. These masks drifted between meanings, joy and fear, seduction and death. And behind them, all kinds of things could happen. A banker might gamble with his client's money. A servant might mock his master. A married man might whisper to someone he shouldn't. A woman might walk freely, unchaperoned and unjudged. And sometimes darker things, robbery, affairs, espionage, even murder. In response, the Venetian Republic, always aware of balance, began regulating mask usage. Laws emerged. You could not wear masks after dark without permission. You could not carry weapons while masked. Masks were forbidden in churches and during much of the year. But during Carnival, all was fair. Beyond the party, the masks became more than disguises. They were metaphors for Venice itself, a city of elegance and decay, of wealth and shadows, of glittering palaces and rotting canals. To be Venetian was to live behind layers, behind ritual, behind silence. And the masks simply made that visible. Even the great paintings of the era reflect this duality. Artists like Pietro Longhi painted masked figures in modest rooms, anonymous, frozen mid-gesture, never quite revealing what lies behind the cloth. Today, Carnival still continues. The masks are brighter, grander, often though for tourists and pageantry. But something of the old mystery lingers in their painted smiles. You begin to wonder, if you had lived them, what would your mask have looked like? What would you have used it for? And who would have recognized you beneath it? We may never know what secrets Venice's masks truly held. But we do know this. In a city built on water, reflection is everything. And sometimes, to know who we are, we must first forget who we appear to be. Let your mind drift now from masks and moonlit parties to marble halls, golden ceilings, and power spoken in whispers. The gondola glides softly under the Bridge of Sighs, A quiet current carries it toward a grand structure, white, silent, ornate. You step ashore. Before you stands the Palazzo Ducali, the palace of the Doge. It rises like lace carved in stone, delicate and vast. But inside, power moves without sound. Welcome to the beating heart of the Venetian Republic. A republic without a king. Venice had no monarch, no throne to be inherited, no royal bloodline. Instead, it had the Doge, a title both regal and restrained. Elected for life but bound by councils, respected but not absolute. The Doge lived here in the palace, yet his quarters were modest. His steps watched, his voice measured. Power in Venice was not shouted. It was whispered through processions, inked in ledgers, weighed in gold ducats. Behind the Doge stood layers of government, the Great Council, the Council of Ten, the Senate, the procurators. Checks within balances, eyes upon eyes. Inside these walls, decisions were made that shaped the seas, but always in silence. The rooms of judgment and ceremony you enter through the Porta della Carta, the ornate paper gate. Up the Scala dei Giganti, the staircase of giants, guarded by massive statues of Mars and Neptune, symbols of Venice's land and sea dominion. At the top, the golden staircase, its ceiling gilded with myth, history, and celestial forms. And then the chambers begin. The Sala del Maggior Consiglio is vast, among the largest rooms in Europe, not supported by internal columns. Here, up to 2,000 noblemen gathered to vote, to debate, to steer the course of the Republic. But they did so with little noise, no raised voices. Just murmurs, parchment, and the occasional creak of wood beneath their robes. High above them, paintings by Tintoretto and Veronese reminded all of Venice's glory, divine favor, noble sacrifice, eternal vigilance. In the Council of Ten's room, secrecy ruled. This body, formed to protect the state, was feared. It dealt in espionage, internal threats, and delicate affairs. Letters slipped under doors. Testimonies whispered behind closed panels. Even architecture whispered hidden peepholes, secret passages, and concealed doors, like a city within the palace. The quiet weight of justice. Not far from the Doge's chambers lies a small wooden door. Step through it, and you're on the Bridge of Sighs, a covered walkway, pale with light, arching across the canal. Prisoners walked here from sentencing to cells. They would look through the small carved windows, one last glance at the lagoon before being swallowed by stone. Some sighed, most said nothing. Below, gondolas pass. Tourists now smile, unaware that once, beneath their feet, men were led into darkness. But even punishment was subdued in Venice. No public spectacles, no roaring crowds, just cold stone. And silence. A mirror of the city, the palace reflects the very spirit of Venice, elegant yet austere, rich with decoration yet spare with emotion, full of power but reluctant to show it. Everything here was meant to balance spectacle with restraint. As you wander through the gilded chambers, it's easy to be dazzled by the gold, the marble, the oil paintings. But beneath all that was a system designed to endure. Through plague, war, and shifting seas, no king ever ruled here. But the system ruled all. Even the Doge, grand in name, was watched. He could not leave the city without permission. He could not own foreign property. His family was restricted from political gain. In this palace of light, shadows moved with purpose. Now, as we leave the palace, let the footsteps fade. Let the gold lose its shine, and let your mind begin its drift toward quiet waters once more. We're ready for the final part. The city sleeps now. The waters of the lagoon are still. The bells have fallen silent. A soft mist drapes over the quiet canals like a curtain drawn between centuries. You've walked the warped docks at dawn with tired hands and aching arms. You followed a blind old man as he shaped empires from behind a veil of diplomacy. You've worn a mask not to hide yourself from others, but to forget yourself for a moment. And you've stepped into chambers where power was velvet soft and dagger sharp. This was medieval Venice, not the romantic postcard, but the lived-in city of labor, ambition, secrecy, and structure, a republic of rituals, a world of narrow alleyways and wide ambition. Where the poor dreamed of rowing, the Doge lived under watch, and the line between spectacle and control was paper-thin. Yet through it all, Venice endured. It did not rise on strength of armies. It floated between east and west, between freedom and formality, between shadow and gold. And maybe that's why it still feels so strange, so distant, so familiar. Because Venice wasn't just built on water, it was built on balance. A balance of silence and sound, structure and chaos, surface and depth. As you lay back now, eyes closing, you can almost hear it. The lap of the canal, the hush of massed footsteps, the soft creak of a gondola's oar. Let those sounds guide you into sleep. For tonight you have walked a city afloat, a city that once ruled without a king, danced in disguise, and whispered through marble halls. And now you rest, far from it, yet closer than you think. Boo not.
Tonight's story comes to a close. If your eyes have gently shut, then I wish you a deep, peaceful sleep. Until we meet again in the next dream.